Hello everybody, this is Philip Brokum, and I recently had the privilege of playing against International Master Dean Ippolito during his simultaneous exhibition at the Marshall Chess Club in New York City. He is rated 2544, and I'm rated 1552, so he's 1,000 points better than I am. Spoiler alert, he won, but I figured I'd share the game with you anyway. Now, for those of you who don't know how simultaneous exhibitions work, the boards are set up in a big circle, and the master goes around the circle, making his moves at the board very rapidly. When he comes to your board, you make your move, he makes his move, and then he goes on to the next board. So in terms of thinking time, you have until he makes it all the way back around the circle to think about your next move. And we were each allowed 2 passes to make him go around again if there was a position we wanted to think more deeply about. He played a total of 16 games over 3.5 hours, which averages out to about 13 minutes per game. He won 13 games, drew 2 games, and lost only a single game, which I think is pretty darn good. To make up for the handicap of having to play 16 games at once, he was allowed white on all the boards, and his strongest opponent was, quote, merely 2,000. I think the funnest part of the exhibition was actually watching the opponents' faces as they were playing the games, because Dean is a very happy guy. He was all smiles, there was a kind of a skip in his step as he went from board to board, he was very polite and nice, and then you look at his opponents, and they're all kind of hunched over the board, scowling to themselves, looking miserable at how just destroyed they are getting. And it was really fun. This is actually the second Simul I've been to. The first was a few years ago, and I saw Grandmaster Larry Christensen give a blindfold simultaneous exhibition to the MIT Chess Club in Boston, well, Cambridge. And that was really fun too. So the point is, if you get the chance to play in a Simul against another master, you should take it because it's really fun. Anyway, let me show you the game. Dean started off rather non-committally against me with knight f3, so I followed suit. And the game quickly transposed into a Slav defense. Now, I was a little bit surprised here when he took on d5, because in theory, when I take back, that leads to a symmetrical pawn structure which should be drawish. Of course, there's a gigantic difference between theory and reality, because in theory, I would know what I'm doing. But in reality, I have no idea what I'm doing, and I'm playing against a master. So he proceeds to crush me to death. So let me show you how he does it. He does queen b3, and already I'm thinking to myself, oh my god, did I just lose a pawn? Because his queen is attacking my d5 pawn, and it's attacking my b7 pawn. So what am I supposed to do? I can't move my queen up to defend both pawns because his knight jumps in and chases my queen away, so that's no good. So I chose a terrible move. I played b6, hoping to defend both pawns. Now, in my defense, I'm not really very booked up, and in a real game I often spend 30 minutes or more on the opening moves. But Dean was playing the openings lightning fast. He was making it around the circle lickety-split, so I probably had about 20 seconds tops to think about my moves in this opening phase. And I really screwed up. This move just totally weakens the queen side like Swiss cheese on these light squares, and you will see how Dean shortly takes advantage of that. So bishop to e4, and now another mistake, e6. The computer says that there's now no way to prevent white from jumping in with his knight to b5, followed by knight to c7, forking my king and the rook, and the bishop here is protecting the c7 square, so I can't take the knight. So I'm already lost here according to the computer. It's about +3. But Dean doesn't see that, and it is kind of unusual, and of course he's playing really fast. So in the real game, he simply plays e3, quite a natural move. Then I play bishop e7. He plays bishop captures b8, and now I make another mistake. So this is 3 mistakes now. I was thinking, should I capture with the rook or should I capture with the queen? And of course I make the wrong choice. I capture with the queen, and now the game is over. If I give you 5 seconds, can you spot the winning move? Yes, the winning move is bishop to b5 check. Okay, so what's wrong with that? It's not checkmate or anything. If I move my knight in the way, he brings his knight down, and suddenly he's attacking my knight twice. It's only defended once, and I certainly don't want to defend it with the queen because I'm not going to lose my queen, just to defend my knight. So that's no good. What else can I do? Well, I can move to f8. That's what I did in the game, king to f8. Now I've lost the castling rights, and my king is going to be forever kind of in danger. The rook is stuck in the corner, but that's not the worst part. The worst part is what happens if he does bishop to c6, hitting the rook, which is trapped in the corner. Well, there is no defense to this, and I have lost the exchange. However, that's not what actually happened. Dean missed that, and he simply played knight to e5, keeping the pressure up. Now, unfortunately, I missed bishop to c6 as well. I was so concerned with my king safety and manually castling my king that I didn't notice the bishop here. I think what he was doing maybe is just making sure that the bishop was going to be protected when it went to c6. But, I don't know. So I played a terrible move, h6, and now he jumps in with the bishop to c6, threatening to win the exchange. There's nothing I can really do, so I continue on trying to manually castle, and he castles first. There's no urgency to take the rook here because the rook's not going anywhere, so he can take it at his leisure. So I try to trade off the knight. He brings his rook to the open file. I trade off the knight, and then maybe I can win a pawn for all my troubles. Yes! That's something I can be proud of. I've won a pawn, and only at the cost of an exchange. So he goes ahead and takes the rook, and now I think to myself, okay, the game is lost. I'm an exchange down against an international master. It's hopeless. He's probably going to just, slowly and methodically crush me to death. And if you're losing, it's always good to go on the offensive and make the game as complicated as possible, because complications always favor the person who's in trouble. So I decide to just sack the entire rook and do queen takes e5, threatening mate on h2, which he must defend. And actually, the computer says this move is no worse, no better either, but it's no worse than simply taking the bishop on a8. So it's not necessarily a blunder, but it's obviously not really all that dangerous. So he stops the mate with pawn to g3, and here's what I had intended. I had hoped for something like this. Knight captures e3, f captures e, queen captures e3 check, king goes in the corner, and then maybe I'd have some pressure with my light squared diagonal to come in and get some sort of mating attack. That's what I was hoping for. He didn't fall for that, though, of course. And I realized too late that if I did play knight captures e3, he was simply going to play rook to e1, pinning the knight to my queen, and that would be an utter disaster. So I had to renege on my plans to attack. And I went another route. I tried h5, hoping for h4, and then taking on g4, and then somehow making use of this open file, and then with all his weak light squares here, and given the fact that I have a light squared bishop and a queen, and his light squared bishop is trapped, it can't get back in the game. Well, it's not trapped, it just can't get back in the game because of my pawn, that maybe I could have some sort of attack. But he puts an end to all of my attacking ambitions with knight to e2, protecting g3 from any sort of attack, and my game is going downhill. So I get my king to relative safety. I try to rearrange some of my pieces. I decline a queen trade. He starts opening up the position and going for the attack. I bring my rook up to defend this knight here on f6, which is feeling kind of pressured, being pinned to my king. And he comes in, intensifying the pressure. I thought for a second that maybe, oh look, I can push my pawn up and then fork the rook and the knight. But no, that's not actually true, because if I do that, the knight takes, and suddenly he has royally forked 3 of my pieces, which would have been a disaster. So I move my bishop up again, hoping to take advantage somehow of the light squares if I get the chance. And he doubles rooks, threatening to start trading off pieces, and since he's a piece up, the endgame will be easily won. So here I make my last ditch effort to win. I notice that rook captures g3 check cannot be taken, because if he takes back, then I have queen to g3 checkmate. But he had seen that and realized that it was no actual danger, and he slowly weasels his king out of trouble by moving it to e1. And now here I figured if I get one tempi to do something, the rook maybe can capture b2 and then threaten checkmate on b1, and maybe if he gives me time, a move or two, I'll be able to create some sort of counterplay. But he doesn't give me time. So he checks, and now my king is kind of running all over the place. He sacks his knight to get his rook into the attack with his queen, and my king is now running for dear life. He sacks the exchange back again, but again, he's still up an entire piece, remember, so he has the freedom to give up material. And the queen comes in, picks up another pawn, and now there's no choice here. I put my rook in the way, and he forces a queen trade, forking my king and my queen. So the queens come off the board, and now he goes after my pawn, because if he gets that pawn out of the way, then his pawn will become a passed pawn and it's going to queen on e8. So I try to defend, hoping for something tricky, like takes, check, king moves, rook comes back down, threatening the bishop. Bishop moves, now rook gets behind the passed pawn, and then maybe I can somehow push my pawn up and he'll have to give up one of his pieces for it. But he doesn't fall for that. He protects his pawn with king e2. Then I push my pawn up. He takes my pawn. I try to protect my back rank, or my 7th rank, in case he tries to just mop up some pawns here. And now I'm just desperately hoping for some sort of, maybe I can get my rook up here, blocking the bishop from guarding the promotion square. And then if my pawn comes up, maybe I can force him to give up the rook for the pawn. Of course, that's only in my fantasy. It's not actually going to happen. And he does one simple move, rook to g5, and here I resigned. The computer actually says there's a checkmate in 12, but that's not what I was looking at clearly. The point is, with his rook on this file, once I move my king somewhere, such as king h2, this rook controls the entire g file. My king is always going to be in the way of my pawn. My pawn is never going to be able to promote. And there's nothing to stop his pawn now from coming all the way down the board and promoting. So, for example, he's got 3 pieces, the rook, the king, and the bishop, which, by the way, is the right color bishop. And so, with my king in the corner, and just no hope, I figured if the colors were reversed, even I could beat him in this position if I was playing white. So I just resigned, and it was all over. But I think it was a fun game. He shook my hand afterwards, and I asked him about that one move. Let me go back to the rook captures g3 check move. I asked him, how do you know which king is in more trouble in such a position like this? Because it does seem that with a rook and a queen on the 2nd rank, and the king here, it looks kind of dangerous for white, but of course it's not at all as dangerous as it is for black. And I think he knew, or he told me, that after his attack he could always trade off the queens if necessary and then be a pawn up in the endgame, so this actually wasn't dangerous. But he said that, given the time constraints, maybe he shouldn't have allowed rook takes g3 check, but either way he still destroyed me. So that was my first game against an international master, and he crushed me, but it was really fun, so I hope you enjoyed the analysis. And again, if you ever have the chance to play in a simul, take it up. It's really fun. Thanks for watching.